Stardust, Chapter 29, Part 3. 11:57 a.m., May 20th, 2015, Warehouse Section 2.
Well, that went better than expected,
Lena thought with a grin as she saw Twilight coaching the humans in exercises that were designed to provide focus for spellcasting.
You're doing great so far, Matt.
Twilight encouraged with a smile.
However, I think the lack of power is coming from a lack of focus. Not that you're scatterbrained or anything, you're just having trouble focusing on drawing and maintaining your power. You also need to unlearn some of your concepts about the world around you. I suspect you're having trouble visualizing what you want to happen because your brain is telling you it can't happen. The biggest hurdle in casting a new spell for me, it's always been altering my concept of what is and isn't possible. So, basically you're saying there is no spoon?
Lena asked, and her grin grew when Matt facepalmed and Twilight arched an eyebrow. Quiet you, Matt grumbled. Come to think of it, why don't you just show off your abilities some more and just disappear?
Oh, I intend to get some mileage out of it once the headaches go away, but not beforehand,
Lena retorted while rubbing her forehead with her right hand.
It's great that we found out how my ability works, but it just blows that my head feels like it's going to explode when I use that ability.
She looked down at the segmented metal plates that made up her left hand as she weighed the benefits with a cost.
If some headaches are the cost of being whole, then it's worth it. Lana mentioned repeating a phrase to channel her abilities. Perhaps you should think of a similar word or words to repeat. As you repeat the words, think only about the coin lifting out of your palm. Do not think about gravity. You have the capacity to ignore it. Do not think of what can't be. Think of what you want to happen, and it will be.
Twilight's voice was almost hypnotic as she explained the concepts to Matt, and his breathing slowed. The coin began to rise out of his palm of his hand, followed by a second and a third. All three hovered steadily above his face for over a minute, with no signs of stopping.
That's great!
Twilight again heaped praise on Matt.
Keep at it, and see if you can lift it anymore. I just need to go give the others some help.
She gave her best smile before turning towards the Russian, who was glaring at the coin in his hand like it had just insulted his mother. The Russian, who had eventually given his first name as Yuri, hadn't shown any obvious powers like Lana or Matt yet, much to his and Twilight's consternation. Valen had added fuel to that fire by bringing the little detector device over to show that he was lit up like a light bulb, which meant that he had some sort of power. Both Rodriguez and Fujikawa had shown some promise with telekinesis, but were quickly losing heart after being barely able to levitate more than a single coin. Despite their difficulties, Twilight was there to celebrate every success and was gradually wearing down the suspicion that was clearly apparent after their initial introductions.
Now that there was any doubt about that,
Lana thought with a grin.
Those smiles of hers are just infectious. There really should be a law against being that cute. Good job!
Twilight celebrated with one of her sugary sweet smiles and a clap of her hooves. Rodriguez had just managed to lift a quarter for 10 straight seconds before it began to wobble and fall. Ugh, thanks, the soldier replied before looking away from the uncomfortable amount of praise. Doesn't feel like much when we saw you lifting shipping containers that weighed tons.
I wasn't always able to do that. There were even times that I struggled to lift a single piece of paper, and it took me lots of practice to get that even down.
Twilight encouraged with another one of her winning smiles.
Hey, Matt! Matt!
Lana shouted.
Wanna try something new?
Lana's shout broke his concentration, and his 3 coins he had been levitating clattered onto the cement. And what would that be? He asked suspiciously as he reached down to collect what he had dropped.
Think of it as target practice and reaction time training,
Lana said as she produced her deck of cards and showed it to him. Her grin increased when Matt did nothing but raise an eyebrow in response. She unboxed the cards and shuffled the deck before looking back to Matt.
So, are you ready?
Fire when ready, Matt answered, but before he had even finished his response, the first card was flying through the air in a tumbling trajectory that would have carried the card over to Matt's right shoulder, if it hadn't stopped in the air in front of him.
Good job. Now, how many can you stop?
Lana grinned mischievously before hurling a second and third card at him. Strain began to show on Matt's face as more and more cards halted in midair.
Stop! Lana, stop! I said stop!
The card shivered in midair and the last one thrown halted before whistling back at Lana. She jerked her head to the side to avoid taking it right into the face, but the edge of the card cut the flesh above her cheekbone like a ripe tomato.
Ow, son of a bitch!
Lana said as she brought her right hand up to cover the cut as she stumbled back. Her eyes briefly traced the card's trajectory to find it embedded into the side of the shipping container that was behind her. Her alarmed gaze switched to a now clearly horrified one. Matt had all but forgotten about the cards that were now littering the floor around him.
Jesus! Lana, are you alright?
Matt asked as he quickly stepped forward even as Lena attempted to wave him off.
I didn't mean for that to happen. Here, let's go down to medical and get that cleaned up.
Twilight and the other humans had noticed the events as they progressed, and the unicorn had stepped forward the moment Lena had cried out.
It, might be best to call it a day for now. Before you all go, I want to point out that we just got lucky right now.
Twilight locked eyes with each of the humans in the warehouse, and Lena saw a side of her that was entirely new. The stern teacher.
It can be used to do many amazing things, but it can also be misused. Someone who isn't trained properly or someone who doesn't take it seriously might accidentally get themselves or others hurt. So please, be very careful when you're using magic in the future. Sorry, Twilight, it was dumb of me. It won't happen again.
Lena apologized sincerely.
Damn. I didn't think a little teasing would have nearly taken my head off.
Matt also appeared equally horrified.
I'll be more careful too.
Good. Respect for magic is probably the most important thing I can teach you at this point. If you don't know what you can do or don't have the sufficient control, you might do something that will haunt you for the rest of your life.
Twilight said, and her gaze fell as she finished her warning.
If we're done, I'll head down to medical and see what they can do for me. Ow.
Lena winced as she pulled her hand away from her face and saw it drenched with her own blood.
Before we go, there's something we need to take with us.
Matt said as he motioned towards the table along the far wall and the suitcase that sat there. He opened it up and scooped its contents up before returning to the group with an uneasy smile.
Twilight's concerns about safety are valid, and in order to prevent unintentional accidents before we're able to control our powers, we'll each be wearing one of these.
Matt handed an item to each of the humans present while keeping the last for himself. They appear to be simple wristwatches, though a small bit of Illyrium could be seen set into the wristbands of each.
The button on the side activates the device and should block spellcasting while active. As I mentioned earlier, this will prevent accidents as well as help with the headaches that are typical of mental exertion. Tap the button on the side to activate it, and then tap it again to deactivate it.
Sounds simple enough.
Lena said as she slipped a watch around her right wrist and tapped the button. Immediately, the low-grade headache that had been plaguing her for the days lessened and her left arm went dead.
What? Oh, come on.
She whined before she realized that without her left hand, she couldn't turn the watch off.
Someone want to lend me a hand? I promise I'll return it in, new condition.
Matt arched an eyebrow before chuckling at her request. Twilight was a bit less hesitant to laugh, at least until the other humans smiled as well.
I take it that the arm and the blocker aren't compatible then?
Apparently not.
Lana sighed.
I guess I'm gonna have to live with the headaches until they go down. They're better than being a one-armed invalid.
Matt gingerly tapped the button onto her watch, and life was again restored to her left arm. He spared a glance over at the opening elevator doors that revealed Shen and Zhang.
You should go down to medical. We'll get Twilight back to the lab.
I'm sorry that you got hurt, Lana.
Twilight apologized while looking sheepish.
I wasn't paying enough attention, and I let something slip by. It won't happen again.
Lana was quick to cut her off before she apologized any further.
No, Twilight. I did something dumb. I consider this paying the piper for my mistake. I'll see you later then. Bye.
Twilight said with a hoof wave as Lana and the three members of Strike 6 made their way to the elevator. 12:20 p.m., May 20th, 2015. Warehouse Section 2. Zhang stopped some distance from Twilight and merely waited while Charles continued to walk forward to talk with the unicorn.
Works for me.
Twilight thought before mentally slapping herself.
Bad, Twilight, bad. You shouldn't think so terribly of others. Hello, Charles.
The unicorn said with a grin and a hoof wave.
Good afternoon, Twilight. Matt, how are those suppressors working?
Charles asked while indicating towards the new watch on Matt's wrist. Matt gave the new accessory a wary eye before shrugging.
So far so good, I guess. I never got the headaches like Lana had, so I can't really tell if it's working all that well, though.
We had a bit of an accident, but it really drove the point home about safety. I'm not really comfortable with devices that can block magic like that, but I suppose it's necessary until proper control can be achieved.
Twilight said. Matt arched an eyebrow before asking.
Well, I suppose that would make sense. If you lost your magic, it'd be like any of us losing our hands. Is that something that happens often back home? Unicorns losing their magic? That's what I mean.
Well, no, it isn't.
Twilight shook her head as she spoke in grave tones.
Magic sealing is something only done in very special circumstances. If a unicorn isn't capable of controlling their magic and presents a danger to others, then they have their power suppressed until a time that they can control them. If the unicorn is intentionally and repeatedly harming others with his or her magic, then the same is applied, though the mere threat of such a punishment is enough to dissuade a few criminals we have from repeating.
Twilight fell into a step beside Matt and Shen before picking up Zhang and stepping into the recently returned elevator.
What was the accident that happened, by the way?
Shen asked as the elevator began to descend.
Oh, I almost took off Lana's face with a playing card,
Matt explained while rubbing the back of his head. Upon seeing the look on Charles's face, he elaborated.
Telekinesis, I think?
Matt's picking up on how to use his powers very quickly.
Twilight was more than willing to heap praise when it was due.
He's quite the natural.
It was Matt's turn this time to grin sheepishly and look away. Any further conversation was interrupted when the elevator doors slid open, to reveal the empty corridor that Twilight was becoming increasingly familiar with. Twilight obediently waded into the elevator as Matt and Charles looked out of the elevator car and down the hallways. They were apparently clear as they both exited to the car to ensure their passing would go unnoticed. And that left Twilight alone with Zhang.
It must be nice to have such fun with your friends,
Zhang stated coolly, and there was a tone of disapproval in his voice.
Anything you do with friends can be fun.
Twilight replied quickly.
Even if it's work, it can be fun with the right people.
Even if they're out risking their lives while you sit safely in here, with the power to end any conflict you participate in?
The words hit Twilight like a physical blow, especially after her recent conversations with Charles on the matter.
I don't want to stay here. I wanted to go out and help everyone. I even asked Charles if I could go out and keep you all safe while you're in danger, but he explained that it would be a bad idea.
You volunteered?
Zhang whispered, but Twilight didn't hear the words.
I thought I could help, but Charles pointed out that I don't have the training to be a soldier and I might get someone hurt. I killed someone by accident because I was scared when I first came to Earth. Charles is right. I might be able to protect you all. I might also get everyone hurt too.
Zhang was silent, and Twilight couldn't bring herself to look at him. By the time Charles and Matt had returned, he was quiet for the entire walk back to the Stardust labs. Zhang watched Matt and Shen and Twilight enter the lab, but he did not follow.
A dishonorable display, to simply assume such a thing,
Zhang chided to himself as he played the conversation back in his head.
If one had accused me of cowardice in such a way, I would have struck him.
Zhang looked down at his clenched fist and let the anger bleed out of him. He slowly opened his fist to see his palm with 4 small cuts into the skin, where his fingernails had dug in, then the bones and blood beneath the skin, then the bundles of wire running through the floor. He blinked and rubbed his temples.
I must be imagining things,
Zhang thought before turning and marching towards the staircases that led up to the barracks.